All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about something you probably never thought went together: knitting and math. Yeah, I know, but there's this really beautiful, profound link between them. And honestly, it might just change how you see both of them forever.
So let's just jump right in with a question. What on earth could an Olympic diver, a gold medal winning diver, have in common with knitting? It sounds like a joke, right? But the answer is actually fascinating, and it's really what this whole thing is about today.
And that brings us to the main character in all of this. We're talking about the British Olympic gold medalist, Tom Daley. Now, the source for today's explainer points out that in Japan, they call him the Amimono Oji. That translates to the knitting prince. And trust me, that's not just some cutesy nickname. It's a real clue about what's going on here.
So you probably saw those pictures, right? Tom Daley sitting in the stands at the Tokyo Olympics, just knitting. It went totally viral. And most people just thought, oh, that's a cute hobby. But what if it's way, way more than that? What if it's actually the physical proof of a set of skills that are super developed and can be used in totally different areas?
Okay, so here's the key. We just need to shift how we look at this. Think about it. When you're knitting, are you just following a recipe? Or are you really executing an algorithm? And when you make a scarf, are you just making a long rectangle? Or are you creating a perfect 2D plane? And a hat? That's not just a hat, it's a 3D geometric form. When you look at it that way, suddenly this craft becomes a hands-on math lesson. It's pretty cool.
All right, so just how deep does this connection go? Well, turns out pretty deep. We can break down this connection on a few different levels, from the stuff that makes total sense right away, all the way to some really abstract, mind-bending ideas.
So you start with the obvious stuff, the practical math. You're doing calculations for how big something should be, getting the gauge right. Then it gets really exciting. This is where you start to get the geometric rules that let you turn a flat piece of fabric into something like a hat. And then finally, you hit this abstract level, where you realize that what you're holding is a physical model for some seriously complex mathematical theories.
And this is where it all snaps into place. See, when you're calculating your gauge and sizing, that's just algebra and ratios, plain and simple. Following a really complicated pattern, that's algorithmic thinking, through and through. All that beautiful, intricate lace or color work, you're playing with combinatorics. And yeah, the moment you start shaping anything, you are literally doing hands-on geometry and topology.
Okay, so that last one, topology, this is where things get really wild. It's the most mind-bending connection for sure. Topology is this branch of math that's all about the properties of space, properties that don't change even if you stretch or bend or twist something. And the amazing part is, knitting lets you literally feel these big abstract ideas in your own two hands.
So to really get this, we need to talk about one key concept. It's called a manifold. And don't worry, it's simpler than it sounds. Basically, a manifold is any surface that looks flat when you're zoomed way in, but from a distance, you can see it's actually curved.
The best way to think about it is Earth itself. I mean, right where you're standing, the ground looks flat, right? But zoom out, way out into space, and whoops, it's a sphere. That's a manifold. And a knitted hat, or even just the shoulder of a sweater, it's the exact same idea. The little patch of fabric in your lap seems flat, but it's really part of a bigger, curved shape.
And what's crazy is that knitters are playing with this idea, with curvature, all the time, probably without even realizing it. You make a simple, flat scarf, you've just created a physical object that represents a plane with zero curvature. It's perfectly mathematically flat. But then, what happens when you start shaping the top of a hat? You strategically take away stitches, right? Those decreases force the fabric to pull inward, to curve. And just like that, you've created a surface with positive curvature. You've made a little sphere. And you can go the other way too. What if you start adding stitches, and adding them really fast? The fabric has nowhere to go but out. It creates those frills, those ruffles. Well, congratulations, you've just knitted a physical model of a hyperbolic plane, a surface with negative curvature. You are literally holding a concept from abstract geometry in your hands. How cool is that?
And all this physical making and doing has a really deep effect on your brain. That repetitive, rhythmic motion of knitting, It can actually switch on what's called the default mode network in your brain. That's the part tied to creativity and big insights. It creates what they call an incubation effect. Basically, your hands are busy, so your subconscious gets to work solving other problems. It's the perfect example of embodied cognition. You're not just thinking about an idea, you are understanding it by making it real.
Okay, so if knitting can bring together different parts of the brain to unlock new ideas, what happens when that idea of integration plays out in someone's actual life? And that brings us right back to our knitting prince Tom Daley, because his story is a perfect example of this.
The source we're looking at today really zeroes in on his authenticity. And what that means is he doesn't try to separate all the different parts of who he is. He's an athlete, sure, but he's also an artist. He's an LGBTQ+ activist. He's a father. He puts it all out there, integrating all of it into one whole person. And that makes him such a powerful role model because he's showing everyone you don't have to just be one thing.
And that craft, the knitting, it also becomes a way to take action. The source points out that he held an exhibition of his knitwear in Tokyo, and the money raised from the auction was donated to a group called Marriage for All Japan, which is an organization that advocates for legalizing same-sex marriage there.
So this all ties into a really powerful idea called learning transfer. Think about it. The kind of incredible spatial awareness and pinpoint body control that you need to be an Olympic diver, that doesn't just disappear when you get out of the pool. It transfers. It can become an artistic vision. It can help you visualize 3D shapes and create these amazing, intricate designs in a totally different arena.
So Tom Daley's story just shows us how all these different skills can be woven together, connecting worlds that seem so far apart, like athletics, art, and activism, all with a single thread. And that really leaves us with one final thought. One last question for you. What hidden connections, what secret superpowers are just waiting there to be found in your hobbies?